April 11th, 2025, and we've got a non-functioning government. They're prorogued, and they've been prorogued because Mark Carney, Justin Trudeau and the Liberals are trying to hold on to power, and through that prorogation, they have successfully held on to power for months and months and months, and it's pretty incredible, actually. And so watching all of this go down, watching this happen, we're just watching a non-functional government that can't be held accountable with the usual checks and balances of our parliament because it's prorogued, continuing to spend lots of money during an election. So it seems like not great. It's not good. Carney is pausing his campaign again for the third time because of Donald Trump's tariffs, which seems weird. Carney uses the Cayman Islands to register another fund when he worked at Brookfield. The CBC goes to great lengths to sanitize this and say it's totally above board, it's legal, it's fine, everything's good. And I think probably maybe legal. That doesn't necessarily mean you want your prime minister engaging in that kind of behavior to dodge taxes in Canada. And the CBC tries to explain it away by saying this ensures that the stakeholders pay taxes in Canada. But we're not talking about the stakeholders becoming prime ministers. We're talking about the guy who's running the fund, who's dodging the taxes for all those people becoming prime minister. So it feels a little icky to me. Counter tariffs are harming Canada and not Trump. The tariffs themselves, argues the food professor, are not as bad as what we're doing to ourselves. And Tulsi Gabbard talks about how the elections are rigged. She says they're rigged. And I think that she's probably, I agree with her. I think they are rigged. And she's specifically talking about, in this case, Dominion machines, but I think there's a whole suite of things that they do to influence elections. There's censorship, there's using mail-in ballots, there's having vote anywhere rules so you can vote not in your jurisdiction. This creates a situation where when they get a number at the end of the day, that number is the number they have to beat. And then they bring in other sources of ballots and things like that. And they say, oh my gosh, can you believe this? Our dark horse candidate won, and your conservative candidate did not. And I think that having proof and having upper echelon of the United States government talking about how elections are rigged is interesting. But if we're honest, we have a lot of evidence that our elections are rigged, thumb on the scale and all the rest of it, and we haven't done anything about it. And we really should do something about it. Anyway, there's lots to get to. Let's get to it first. The food professor, first we go to update news, and Giorgia Meloni, we have to talk tariffs. Meloni of Italy is reportedly preparing to travel to the United States next week to negotiate a trade deal based on Italy's priorities, despite the stance of Brussels. So the EU paused tariffs 90 days and all the rest, but it looks like Trump wants to have bespoke one-on-one trade deals with all sorts of countries, making sure that the United States isn't being taken advantage of. And as I reported yesterday, Trump wants to be personally involved in all of this. And so that's all interesting. That's interesting to me. And the fact that Italy is breaking from the EU to do negotiations, also interesting. That's something to pay attention to. The food professor is talking about Canada's tariffs, and what we're doing is actually harming ourselves. He says Ottawa's counter tariffs, not Trump, are hurting Canada's food economy. Ottawa's response to the trade war isn't a strategy. It's an economic self-sabotage masquerading as political bravery. Canada's food processing sector, is becoming increasingly vulnerable, not merely to global market volatility, but as a direct consequence of Ottawa's policy decisions. In choosing to retaliate against U.S. protectionism with formal counter tariffs, Canada now finds itself aligned with China as one of only 2 countries to pursue such measures. This matters when we get to the Liberal series of tabs, because Chinagate is the big story for Mark Carney, and Mark Carney insists the Globe and Mail is lying, and I think that's absolutely hilarious. I don't think the Globe and Mail is honest, and I think they're lying liars. But of the two, which one has the worst credibility? I'd say Mark Carney. And the whole China angle, it's wild, because he's just saying nothing to see here, citizen, and the Globe and Mail is lying. And I don't believe him. So pay attention to this. The reason I'm structuring it this way is because this informs Mark Carney and the Liberals and Chinagate as well. But basically, why is Canada aligned with China against our biggest trading partner? Why are we doing that? It doesn't make any kind of sense. Is Mark Carney compromised by China? Maybe. But he says, no. absolutely not. I didn't meet with them. I don't know what you're talking about. This picture right here, sir, you see with you and all of the upper echelon that you say you don't know right here. I'll show you that in a second, but we'll talk about this first. While these actions may serve domestic political optics, they are inflicting measurable and lasting harm on Canada's food manufacturing ecosystem. What happened to the Caretaker Convention? You're not supposed to do harm to the country while you're in an election as the prime minister. Tariffs on U.S. food ingredients and critical inputs such as food-grade aluminum and steel are ripping through the supply chain. Large multinational processors often have the ability to absorb or deflect these added costs, passing them on to dominant grocery chains or retailers like Loblaws, Sobeys, and Metro. Those grocers in turn push the increases to consumers. The result is a persistent layer of food price inflation that is now entrenched across many product categories. But the deepest strain is being felt by Canada's smaller, regionally based food manufacturers, the vast network of family-owned processors and local businesses that make up the core of this sector. These firms operate with tight margins, limited purchasing power, and few options for substituting inputs. Many are now facing cost increases of 15 to 25% on specific goods, levels that can jeopardize their viability because of the counter tariffs that we're putting on ourselves. Although Ottawa claims that mechanisms exist to offset these tariff impacts, the design of the system largely excludes the very firms it's meant to protect. Most smaller processors don't import directly. They purchase ingredients through distributors and brokers who are registered as the importers of record. Consequently, any rebates or tariff refunds are routed to intermediaries, not the manufacturers absorbing the higher costs. Federal guidelines often classify end users in ways that further disqualify small manufacturers from receiving support. This is what we're hearing from food manufacturers. If a food manufacturer isn't both the importer or of record and the end user, it's out of luck, effectively excluding hundreds of food processors across the country. The policy design here reveals a fundamental misunderstanding of how Canada's food supply chain works. Expecting small processors to negotiate retroactive relief from intermediaries, some of whom are foreign-owned, is both impractical and naive. Encouraging them to source elsewhere ignores ingredient-specific dependencies that cannot easily be replicated outside of the United States or elsewhere as well. The downstream, China, right, like the Chinese tariffs are a big deal. The downstream effects are already emerging: reduced innovation, diminished product variety, and fewer entrants in the market. With less competition and more reliance on imports, Canada's food sovereignty erodes and the system becomes more fragile. This isn't about whether Canada should take a stand in trade disputes. It's about choosing tools that don't quietly undermine our own economic foundation. Trade tensions with the United States, a country that accounts for roughly 1/4 of the global GDP, require more than performative gestures. They demand smart, targeted policy informed by rigorous economic analysis. Mark Carney may view himself as a caretaker of Canada's economic future in the face of Washington's unpredictability, but the current trade policy tells a different story, one in which political symbolism is prioritized over economic substance. The food economy is paying the price for this disconnect, quietly but surely. Canada's independent processors are the backbone of our food manufacturing base. If they're forced out of the market by blunt instruments like counter tariffs, the cost will be borne not just by business owners, but by consumers through higher prices, fewer choices, and diminished capacity to feed ourselves. And that's just one of the aspects of this whole thing. China is also tariffing the United States. They just increased their tariffs to 125%. What do you think Trump's going to do? 200%, 225%, more, higher, right? So we'll see how this whole thing plays out. Global News is reporting Prime Minister Carney is pausing his federal election campaign for a third time to tackle U.S. President Donald Trump's escalating global trade war. Meloni of Italy is going to negotiate with Trump, and Carney is trying to start a war with Trump. Why? Why is Carney trying to do that? Who is influencing Carney to do that? Here's that picture I was talking about of those people that Carney doesn't know. Who are these guys? I don't know who these guys are. They got out of a car, they ran up to me, they snapped this picture, and they jumped back in the car and they drove off. What do you call that again? It's not a fire drill. It's something else. Gray Matter podcast says it seems that Mark Carney only lies when his lips are moving. Mark Carney and the Liberal Party of Canada hate Canadians. They actually think that human beings are a pestilence upon the earth which must be culled and exterminated so that the new era of transhumanism can begin. Maybe he's a globalist, but here, Canada Proud says, Mark Carney said the Globe and Mail was lying when they reported that he met with Jingsao Commerce Council of Canada. Anyway, here's Mark Carney meeting with Jingsao Commerce Council of Canada. Here they are, right here. It was absolutely not drive by anybody running up to Mark Carney and taking a picture. And there are a bunch of people who say, this happens to politicians. Here's Mark Carney denying that he knows those guys. He's saying, hey, the Globe and Mail, stop being lying liars. And while I understand the sentiment, because I do think that the Globe and Mail lie often, they lie at the behest of the government. The government says, you have to say this, and then the Globe and Mail says it. So it's weird that guy who is representing or is the prime minister is calling the Globe and Mail liars. Here we go. Who do you believe, Mark Carney or the Globe and Mail? Here we go.
Hi, Bitchute Melise, Globe and Mail. My colleagues have a story today about a Liberal candidate's relations with China-friendly groups and a meeting that you also held with a pro-Beijing group. So my question is, why did you meet with this pro-Beijing group, Jiangsu Commerce Council of Canada? And is the party okay with the fact that Liberal candidate Peter Yan has been so close with the Chinese consulate and China-friendly groups, given the public inquiry into foreign interference, says that this is a tactic China uses to exert influence?
Okay, well, I'm sorry, but you can't believe everything you read in the Globe and Mail. So in your question, and I guess in the article in question, you said I had a meeting with whatever your term was, Beijing group. I've never heard of this group, okay? Never heard of this group. Certainly didn't have a set-up meeting with this group. Full stop. So check your sources before you write things like that.
Ha! They superimposed on the screen the picture that I was just showing you of Mark Carney meeting with that group. Here's more reactions to this whole thing. Terry says, wow, we can only believe Mark Carney, I guess. This, my friends, is called poisoning the well, and Mark Carney is doing it to the Fifth Estate, the Globe and Mail. China would be proud, right? Like, don't believe your lying eyes or reading the Globe and Mail, right? Believe only me. Courtney is responding to this as well. You can't believe everything you read in the Globe and Mail, says Mark Carney. Mark Carney vehemently denies allegations in the new Globe and Mail story about him meeting with pro-Beijing group and supports candidates whose story says met with the same people. I would read you the story, but they removed it. All of the articles surrounding this have been removed. All of them. Weird, right? Ryan says he's responding to this. Mark Carney, with a straight face on live TV, denied ever meeting with the Jiangsu Commerce Council of Canada, JCCC, the very group he is seen pictured here with. Weird. You don't know these guys, Mark Carney? I've never seen these people in my life. Get this picture out of my face. Or else, right? Petrified COVID Parent says this video is AI. So here he is again. This is denying that he ever met with them. This is the erased article from the JCCC article talking about meeting with Mark Carney. It says on March 9th, 2025, local time, Canada's political arena ushered in major changes. Mark Carney was successfully elected as the leader of the Liberal Party of Canada, indicating that in the near future, he will shoulder the heavy responsibility of Prime Minister of Canada. Recently, Chu Jiangao Gang, I'm getting that terribly wrong, I'm sorry, president of the Ginseng International Chamber of Commerce in Canada, JCCC, and Jiang Ru, honorary president, and other Chamber of Commerce representatives had an in-depth meeting with the soon-to-be appointed Prime Minister. That's what it says. And they removed the article. They removed it, right? Like, they just erased it. Hold on. Here's the article being removed from the Globe and Mail website. Mark Nixon says, this is unbelievable. Mark Carney got the Globe and Mail article removed. Nothing to see here. And Dennis says, no one met, and that's that. That's where we're at now. And so this is a statement from the Liberal Party. Quote, the web post referenced in the Globe and Mail article is inaccurate, as is the suggestion that Mr. Carney had any such in-depth discussion. We have reached out to the organization correcting the record and asked that they remove such claims immediately. So the Liberal campaign reached out and had these things removed. And here is the Northern Perspective says something very interesting happened shortly after we posted our recent video. The JCCC removed the article that we cited and linked it to our sources. Tells us that they are trying to support Carney in denying that this meeting ever happened. What are you hiding, Mark? So here's the original article, and here's the English translation if you want to read it. But it says on March, what I just read, it's there, the screenshot translated to English from, this is a pretty, I think that Northern Perspective is a pretty reliable source. I don't think they're making up Chinese articles to bolster a story, right? So this was removed. Interesting. In lockstep with the Globe and Mail removing those stories. Here is, I think this is a Globe and Mail reporter on CBC talking about this story, and he goes pretty in depth about what they're reporting, what they're alleging, and so like why do you think Mark Carney and China are working so hand in glove, right? Super interesting, super duper weird. Here we go. Oh, it has been one day since Too Fast Speed. Goodness gracious me. These things happen. Here we go.
Senator, what's your reaction to what Carney said today in the statement from the party?
Well, first of all, we never said that there was a meeting. We said that this organization met him, and according to their website, they had an in-depth discussion. Mm-hmm. That's the story, and which, by the way, that wasn't the focus of the story. The focus of the story is on the Liberal candidate in the riding that was replaced by another Liberal
Etobicoke
MP.
North, I think,
Etobicoke,
yeah.
no, I know it's
Union Market.
Markham
Union.
Yeah, sorry. My apologies.
And this man named Peter Yen is a former deputy police chief. We checked him out, and he is being connected to Beijing-friendly organizations, including this organization who met with Mr. Carney. They echo and repeat the lines of the Chinese Communist Party. The other groups that Mr. Yen met with were the Chinese Freemasons, which talks about annexation of Taiwan. He's been celebrated and had many meetings with the Chinese consulate, which we now know from the public inquiry into foreign interference that the Chinese consulate is the key organizing body for all of these proxy groups that try to influence politicians. So that was the point of our story. But here's the thing I want to talk, and I'm glad Mr. Carney raised this, because here's the reason why. This same group, if you go to the website, after they met him, they wrote a laudatory thing about how great Mark Carney is, how great he is and going to improve Chinese-Canadian relations. What did we find out on Monday? The site committee, which looks into federal election interference, said that WeChat and China has been trying to mold public opinion involving Mr. Carney. What are they molding? Nice things about him, what a tough guy he is, how he can take on the Americans. So I guess the point here is, has anybody learned anything from the foreign interference inquiry or not? This is the strategy of China to try to influence no matter which political party you are. And rather than trying to attack the media, why doesn't he just say, look, we have to do a better job of dealing with these kind of organizations that are trying to influence politicians?
Right.
So it's interesting. He's talking about he's making the case that the meeting with this group, the JCCC, wasn't even the source, wasn't even the really force of the story. The force of the story was this other candidate who replaced Paul Chiang is pretty terrible and very involved with influencing politicians or organizations that do influence politicians. And what's up with that? Is the party comfortable with that? And Mark Carney pivots to, I never met with them. I don't even know them. And whoa, okay, man, that's what? That wasn't even it. And who are these guys? What's this picture about? Ryan is responding to this as well. Smart, well-connected and central banker who endlessly brags about knowing how the world works just managed to find himself in a photo with the Jiangsu Commerce Council of Canada, JCCC, and pleads ignorance to it. It's actually quite insulting how stupid he thinks we all are. Yep, that's kind of weird, right? Brian Lilly says, as I said in my column, I can forgive any politician for a grip and grin photo with someone he doesn't know. I took many photos with fans today at CSFN. I didn't do a background check. But if you're meeting with the whole executive and they're posting about it, you know who they are. Yeah, if there's an entire article that starts with, we had a super great meeting, an in-depth meeting with the soon-to-be appointed Prime Minister. Who? Prime Minister Carney. I haven't heard of him. I don't know what you're talking about. Right? Bullshit. Absolute bullshit. All of these people are calling this out, and it's bullshit. And the Liberals are going to pretend that what they say is true, and anybody else who's saying anything is a liar. And it's well, we've got all this evidence. And they're like, well, the evidence is wrong. That's why it was scrubbed from the internet. Okay, Stalin. Here's Sheldon, and he says, this is another scandal, not a China scandal, but there were two Chinese scandals in the story that we just talked about. And the third Chinese scandal was the one before it, Paul Chiang calling for the kidnapping of his political opponent. Then that's Chinagate 1. Chinagate 2 is Paul Chiang is replaced with a very insider Chinese policeman, just like Paul Chiang, right? Who hasn't said we should kidnap my opponent yet. Right? And scandal 3 is, I never met those men. I don't know what you're talking about. So, it's weird. It's weird. Definitely 3 Chinagate scandals. Will there be more? Probably. But this is a different scandal. This is not a Chinagate scandal. And this isn't specifically a Carney scandal. This is a more general spending scandal. And Sheldon says 178 million taxpayer dollars used to promote the Liberal lies through the CBC during an election, while the government has been closed for almost a quarter of a year, $40 billion in additional spending. Yeah, so Western Standard goes through the Governor General authorizing this amount of money to just spend willy-nilly on whatever they want. And Western Standard says Governor General authorized $40 billion dollars with a B in spending, and 178 million for CBC as Parliament enters 94th day of prorogation, right? And that's pretty incredible, really. The whole article is worth reading, so we'll go through it. Thanks to the Liberal Party of Canada, there's no functioning federal government. The party prorogued Parliament to allow time to find a new leader, Mark Carney. Now, under authorization of the Governor-General, the federal government is spending $40 billion to bolster Canada's bureaucracy as Parliament enters its 94th day of prorogation. That includes $178 million for the CBC, Canada's state broadcaster. The appropriate ministers have reported that the payment of these sums is urgently required for the public good, the Government of Canada said on its website. And whereas the Parliament is not in session, there's no other appropriate way to which the payment of these sums may be made. Therefore, Her Excellency, the Governor-General, in Council, on the recommendation of the President of the Treasury Board under subsection 30 of the Financial Administration Act, directs the preparation of a special warrant to be signed by the Governor-General authorizing the payment, effective April 1, of the sums mentioned in the schedule, amounting in the aggregate to $40 billion to be made out to the Consolidated Revenue Fund. The Department for Women and Gender Equality received $92 million. Canada's national debt has seen significant growth over the past decade, reflecting a mix of economic challenges, policy decisions, and global events like the COVID-19 pandemic. Yeah, that whole thing too. We should really be exploring that. What happened there exactly, and why did the governments around the world take that as a wholesale chance to steal from the constituents, right? To ransack the treasuries, et cetera, et cetera. Why did COVID necessitate all that spending? Right? Stay home, stay safe, while we destroy the economy and take all the money. Anyway, back to this. As of March 24, the national government debt stood at approximately 2.1 trillion with a T, Canadian. This marks a substantial increase from 2015 when the federal debt was around 619 billion. Over the 10-year period, the debt has roughly doubled, growing at an average annual rate of 7 to 10%, with sharper spikes during pandemic years due to increased government spending to support the economy. As for debt servicing, the cost for the 24-25 fiscal year is projected at $54.1 billion, or 1.8% of GDP. The problem with Canada as well is that debt is not actually calculated correctly, because Ontario carries its debt and it's calculated separately from the federal debt. The federal debt is a debt that is calculated independently from all the provincial debt. If you add all the provincial debt and the federal debt, then you get a clearer picture of the debt that's held by Canada, but nobody does that because that's a scary ass number. So that's not what they want to do. But it's very interesting that the government is very able to just keep spending money. What are the limits on this? You can just spend trillions of dollars and not ask anybody, no oversight, no nothing. We've got a prorogued Parliament and a Governor-General who's got an itchy Instapen, or what are they called? The auto pens, right? Like, is she signing these things, or do they have an auto pen of the Governor-General and she's off in Mexico somewhere? I don't know. Michael Chong's responding to this. He says, this is beyond the pale. Where's the caretaker convention? Where's the Privy Council office? Where is our independent public service providing fearless advice? Prime Minister, you cannot bind a future government during a writ period. Furthermore, your repeated use of the office of Prime Minister during the writ period amounts to putting your thumb on the scale of the electoral process. Yeah, so he keeps going back and using, in this one, third campaign pause, Chong is saying you can't bind the next government by things that you're saying now. You can't do that. That's beyond the pale. And he's right. And so is anybody going to rein in the Liberals and Mark Carney? No, I don't think so. National Post says Mark Carney has promised heat pumps and prefabricated homes, both of which he owns a major stake in. And Tracy says, if you thought a rich billionaire globalist was running for prime minister for a measly $400,000 a year paycheck, you'd be wrong. It's way, way more than that, right? He's going to have Brookfield provide heat pumps for the government of Canada, and bingo, bango, bongo, his whole portfolio is being raised because of that, right? So, and it's not just the heat pumps, it's prefabricated mobile homes, right? And that's a Mark Carney Brookfield invention too, right? So you're welcome, everybody. No more 10 cities, we're upgrading you. And that's not what anybody is interested in, I don't think. Daniel says Brookfield used Cayman Islands to register third fund managed by Carney. So people are digging this stuff up. Michael Cooper's responding. He says more tax dodging from Carney. Carney registered a $5 billion fund in the Cayman Islands and at least $30 billion in funds between Bermuda and the Cayman Islands. All to avoid paying Canadian taxes. Carney must come clean and reveal how much money he has in offshore tax havens. That'd be nice to know, wouldn't it? Nah, we're not allowed to know that. And also, he doesn't know who those men are. And any story that says he met with them is false. Okay. Andy Lee says, for anyone who wants to pretend that the Cayman Islands thing didn't happen, here are the posted SEC filings. Just stop. So here's Mark Carney's $5 billion fund filed through the Cayman Islands. And you can see Cayman Islands is under, it's like midway down. And you can see Brookfield, it's under 2, principal, street address, name of insurer, and then the street address 1, Brookfield Asset Management at the bottom there. You should be able to see that if you scroll in. I think you can see it anyway. I'll bring it up. Just there you go, right there. Brookfield Asset Management. Okay, so super duper weird. CBC is making use of that $92 million, and they are saying, listen, everything is illegal. Everything is legal. No problems. Above board. Nothing to see here. Mark Carney's a genius. A $5 billion investment fund created under Mark Carney's leadership at Brookfield Asset Management was registered in the Cayman Islands tax haven according to records obtained by Radio Canada. That is in addition to 2 other funds totaling $25 billion that were registered in Bermuda, another offshore tax haven, when the Liberal leader was on the firm's board of directors from 2020 to 2025. In all 3 cases, the structures are legal, respect international tax standards, and are commonly used by investment firms. They also ensure Canadian investors pay taxes on the profits from their investments in Canada and not in foreign countries. Isn't that how it works anyway? Like, I'm pretty sure that's how it works. Anyway, regardless, is this CBC doing its due diligence? And during the server Hillary Clinton 2016 Comey thing, Hillary Clinton's defense was this wasn't explicitly not allowed. What I did was in the rule of law, like in the letter of the law, I was allowed to do this because it didn't say I wasn't allowed to do this, right? It didn't explicitly say I wasn't. So this is in the rules. It wasn't illegal. There was no law, no regulation. And so it feels like that. It feels like if people understood how they were using this loophole, and if people understood, exactly how they were dodging taxes, et cetera, I think they wouldn't tolerate it. But CBC is saying, no, don't worry. This follows all the rules, but it follows the rules of the globalists' financial structure. And that doesn't necessarily help you or me. Like, can you or me buy into this? Can you or me make sure that we don't pay Canadian taxes until we want to pay Canadian taxes on exactly the amount of Canadian money that we want to tell CRA that we use, right? I don't think that that's how it works, but it works like that for these guys, I think, right? And I don't like the CBC. I'm fine with them explaining things, but and fine if it's legal, but I think that they need to explain the legal structure a little bit better rather than just saying, oh, it's legal, don't worry about it. You know what I mean? Like, there should be some kind of investigative, like, this is what normal people do. This is what Brookfield does. This is the pathway to that, maybe. This is who are usual clients of Brookfield's, who are having their taxes hidden. Like, that information would be interesting to me. Can I be one of those people? Like, how do I get my taxes in such a, like, washed through Bermuda? Is that totally above board? That's okay. We've got a prime minister who's doing that. So, like, if the prime minister's doing that, where's the company that I can go to that'll do that for me, right? Like, how much money do I need to have? Oh, investments totaling 1 million, 2 million, 5 million, 10 million, right? Like, where exactly do you fall? If you don't have that, do you have to pay taxes? The guy making $30,000 a year, he's got to pay taxes because he doesn't hit the bottom qualifier to wash his taxes through Bermuda. So he's got to pay up. Huh. It's weird. Super weird, right? Duper weird. Anyway, Juno News is reporting Mark Carney's former company, Brookfield, has been accused of violating Indigenous rights, environmental damage, and was alleged to have violated modern slave labor prohibitions. But unfortunately, this is for subscriber only. Darn. I was like, wow, slave labor. I mean, that sounds scandalous, right? Super scandalous. So maybe, I don't know. That's what Juno News is saying. So check that out if you're interested. Here is MCGA. This is Spencer from MCGA, and he put on a hilarious outfit, and he went to Mark Carney rally, and he called Mark Carney out for his Epstein ties, and Mark Carney is he's such a loser. The whole rally goes into disarray, and they start doing their weak Carney thing. Hold on, I'm not sure if this is it.
Measures on crime, and we announced a series of measures.
No, hold on, it's back here. He's back on track. It's back here, I think.
To our country for decades, that system is over, and I'm afraid our.
Don't.
Let's get it right. Look. Thank you. You know what? You know what? Thank you.
Takes him a long time to get back on track, but he's hilarious. He's super funny. Like he does all this guerrilla stuff. At the end, he's taking a picture with the cops. He's like, "Hey, can I get a picture with you guys?" And the one cop's like, "No, but I guess you can take it because I'm on the street. I can't tell you not to." And he's like, "Great," It's super funny. Anyway, check that out if you're interested. He makes some good content, and I guess he's immune to being canceled. So me, I'm canceled. Him, no canceled. All right, whatever. Gunther's talking about the I think Chinese Communist Party influenced or triad influenced betting markets that say Carney's going to be the next prime minister by a lot, 63%, liberal majority they're calling for. Liberal majority. Wow. Liberal minority, 16%, conservative minority, 14%, conservative majority, 10%. That's what Polymarket is saying. So that's pretty wild. And Gunther's saying Canada's going to make a mistake, a very, very bad mistake, according to Polymarket. And True Explorer says, boyfriend Carney moved to Canada in January and in less than 2 months became the prime minister. Wide speculation was that Poilievre was going to be the next prime minister. Did globalists intervene? Mark Carney is a globalist. How could the former governor of the Bank of England have any support in Canada? It's super sus. And I think, yeah, you're totally right. Absolutely 100% correct on that one. Sean says Mark Carney will be publicly humiliated and destroyed if he debates Pierre Poilievre. Poilievre is wittier and quick on his feet and sharper. Carney says, too much. If he's trying to get a point out, he is not articulate and fast, whereas Poilievre seems to get his ducks in a row faster and he's quicker to the point. So he draws first blood quicker. And you can see examples of these two exchanging. There was Poilievre, I think, was the finance shadow, and Freeland pawned off to Carney to answer a question, and Carney and Poilievre got into it a few times, more than once. And in my opinion, Carney came out looking terribly, and Poilievre came out on top most of the time. And the chair was trying to protect Carney, but I mean, in a debate, the host will protect Carney as well. But I'm interested to see Mark Carney slither out of the debates. When are the debates? I thought it was the 12th to the 14th. The 28th is the election. So, like, are we going to have a debate? Nobody's even talking about it. This is the worst Canadian election ever. It's so boring. And Mark Carney's terrible. And they're all friggin' globalists. It's ridiculous. And the only non-globalists aren't getting much play. So, I mean, it is what it is. But it's ridiculous. And it's boring. And it's stupid. And I don't think we should tolerate any of them. They should all be under investigation for treason. All of them, seriously. Here's Jagmeet Singh in the most cringeworthy, it's 42 seconds and it's bad and it just keeps getting worse. He keeps asking if they're ready and they're like, "Oh, we're ready." And he's like, "Are you ready?" And they're like, "We're ready." And then they start jumping and it's just embarrassing at this point in time. I can't believe there are grown people who think this is what a political party is supposed to be. Like, get your head out of the sand, people. This is ridiculous. You look ridiculous. Jagmeet Singh looks ridiculous, and all the people who are supporting him look ridiculous. And I'm talking specifically in this video and also generally. Here we go.
We're all going to jump together. Get ready, everybody. We're going to show them that we're ready.
Are you ready?
We're ready to fight. We're ready to win. Here we go. Get ready. Get ready. Get warmed up. Get warmed up. Here we go. Here we go. Let's go. Ready? Are you ready? Are you ready? Are you ready? Here we go. 1, 2, 3. Yes.
It was at this point you wondered what the heck you were doing. Are we doing jazzercise? Is this Zumba? Like, did I take a wrong turn? I thought this was a political rally. Yeah, we're ready to jump, Jagmeet. Thanks for that. What is going on? Holly Doan, let's talk CPC very quickly. And Holly Doan says, Pierre Poilievre yesterday questioned why a public registry of foreign agents approved by Parliament 9 months ago is still not in operation. Hey, has anybody seen the fentanyl czar? What's that fentanyl czar guy's name? Do we have a name for the fentanyl czar? Anybody doing anything on the fentanyl czar? I heard there was a couple of labs busted this morning, and I think it was 3 labs, one person who worked in all 3 labs, and they've been released on bail. And I'm not even joking. I was like, oh, for crying out loud. Ridiculous stuff. Ridiculous. It's ridiculous. We're being taken for a ride. 9 months ago. Where are these people? Oh, yeah, we'll give you a fentanyl. I bet you the fentanyl czar is making 100 grand a year, 200 grand a year, 400 grand a year. And he's sitting at home. He's playing ping pong all by himself. He's like, I wonder what I'll do today. I guess nothing, right? I don't see them. With Trump, daily press conferences, daily signatures for things, daily availability, sometimes multiple times a day availability, talking about everything that he's doing. These people, nothing, absolutely nothing. And like, not just Trump, the people like downstream from Trump, Bobby Kennedy, Elon Musk, like a bunch of secretaries, other representatives, the press secretary, et cetera, our government, it just hates us. They hate us and they don't want us to be involved in anything. They don't want us to know about anything. And it's interesting, like they want to control the press and everything at a micro level. And I get itchy about it because it's ridiculous. Here's a guy who's not allowed into Pierre Poilievre's rally because he's wearing a Make Canada Great Again hat. He says that they're telling him he has to take off his hat, but his hat was expensive and he's proud of it and he doesn't want to take it off. And he's upset. So he doesn't like Pierre Poilievre saying that you can't wear this hat into the rally. Here we go.
They wouldn't let you in with the hat?
They don't let me. They let me if I take the hat out because they said it's MAGA. It has to do with Trump. It's nothing to do with Trump. I'm proud that I pay $50 for this hat. That's the only one in Canada. And they don't let me get in because I said make Canada great again. That's very disappointing. I see people come in with flags, with Poilievre's name, and they don't let me go in unless I take the hat out. I decide not to take the hat out.
Oh, wow.
You know?
They wouldn't let you in with the hat?
They don't let me. They let me.
So there you go. So interesting. And we've seen this kind of stuff. Yesterday I was reporting on people who weren't allowed in. Poilievre was in Kitchener yesterday evening. Right Blend was there. He says, Eric shared some great analysis about our country. Listen to him speak wisdom as a seemingly endless line of supporters walk by on their way into the Poilievre Kitchener rally. So it's interesting. They're talking about all sorts of stuff. And at the beginning of it, though, they're talking about how there's a bunch of people who they didn't think were going to be let in because I don't know what they're wearing or whatever, but they're talking about, I don't think everybody's going to be let in. But they're talking about hope and so on and so forth. So it's interesting what's going on grassroots. Is that grassroots? Right Blend says it's grassroots. I don't know. Is it? Is pleb grassroots too? Michael Barrett says, soft on crime Carney. Mark Carney's policies are more of the same after a decade of liberal failures. He won't repeal C5 or C75, the laws that keep criminals on our streets. Only a new conservative government will bring the 3 strikes law that keeps criminals behind bars and safe for a change. Now, again, I think and I don't disagree necessarily with the 3 strike law. I don't disagree with putting people in jail. I don't know about a 3 strike law. The 3 strike law, I think I maybe don't like. But I don't like repeat offenders, so it's a good way to get a handle on it, maybe for a short period of time. What does Bukele say? How have they gotten a handle on it in El Salvador and Argentina and stuff like that? What are they doing there? We don't have that big of a problem as Argentina or El Salvador had here, although we're getting there. But I want safe streets, sure. But there's I feel like the conservatives, again, are going a little bit, not even too far, just wrong direction with regards to that. So I don't know. Do you like the 3 strike law? I remember I remember people pushing back on it in the 90s. There was a 3 strike law in California, maybe, and people were being caught up in like random things and going to jail for long periods of time. And the argument was it was expensive and it didn't actually deter people. And there's a better way to deter people. I don't have a suggestion for a better way to deter people. It just seems like we're being set up to try and solve a problem, like there's too much crime, and we're going to create another problem with this 3 strike law that if we're smarter about policy implementation, we could avoid it. Does that make sense? 3 strike law sells really well on the campaign trail, but implementation has limitations and is potentially problematic. Maybe. PPC, we'll talk about the PPC and then we'll kill the stream because we're at 40 minutes. I try and do it at half an hour, but I want to get the election stuff done as we're in election season. Maxime Bernier says, the Windsor Star is reporting Bernier doesn't want retaliatory tariffs and he wants to renegotiate a trade deal instead. And yeah, that's great. I'm glad that there's at least one political party that's offering an alternative. So if you don't like the idea of retaliatory tariffs, you could vote for Maxime Bernier, and that would be his policy. So there you go. It's interesting, and I really enjoy Canadian politics. But again, this election cycle specifically has been terrible. The candidates are terrible. It's not exciting at all. The rallies are Carney's look manufactured, and there's something about Pierre's that bothered me. So I don't know. And it's not a very good election. I feel very mediocre about it. David says how the CBC covers a conservative crime announcement versus how they cover a liberal crime announcement. Here's Polyev. Polyev tries to draw voter attention to violent crime as Trump concerns dominate. So, okay. And here's the Liberal. Carney announces sweeping plan to crack down on crime and strengthen the border. Liberal leader says weak U.S. border measures allow guns, drugs to flow into Canada. Carney wants to strengthen the buyback program, meaning he wants to hire, I think it's 200 people to do the gun buybacks, which is seizures. And that's not great, right? Like, that's not very good at all. Here's Ted. He says, take a look at CBC. All Canadians should understand how corrupt the purchased media is and why it needs to go. Before defunding, they should be sued and brought before a journalist board. Yeah, probably. And this is for the dishonest headlines and shaping. Here's Tulsi Gabbard talking about Dominion machines and elections being rigged. And we'll watch this, and then I'll say goodbye to the stream. Here we go.
We're investigating. We have the best of the best going after this. Election integrity being one of them. We have evidence of how these electronic voting systems have been vulnerable to hackers for a very long time and vulnerable to exploitation to manipulate the results of the votes being cast, which further drives forward your mandate to bring about paper ballots across the country so that voters can have faith in the integrity of our elections.
So there you go. Tulsi Gabbard talking about rigged machines and hackers and all the rest. And I think that's interesting because I think our elections are rigged too. And we should probably put an end to that if we can put an end to that. And with that, we'll say goodbye to the stream. Thanks for watching, everybody. We'll catch you tomorrow. And we'll carry on with it. Hello, everyone. Thanks very much for watching. This is just a short version of a longer show. If you'd like to get the whole show, you can go over to CanadaPoly.com and sign up for a subscription. Just look in the drop-down tab for Shop and Donate and look for subscriptions, and you'll get immediate access to the full show. Love to see you. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a wonderful, wonderful